giving you a voice,
making it loud our own way.
Welcome to the fun.
First Updates Now FRC is produced in partnership with the Blue Alliance. Keep up to date on all live and archived First Robotics events and team stats at thebluealliance.com. And by viewers like you. We need your help to keep fun loud, live, and independent. Help us by visiting our Patreon to pledge your support at patreon.com/First Updates Now. You can also support fun live on Twitch for a few bucks a month or by linking your Prime account for free and clicking subscribe.
Good evening, everyone in the fun universe, and welcome to the show where the tea is sweeter than your grandmother's fresh baked cookies, and the bots are hotter than the Florida sun. Reporting from the Sweet Tea Team Southeast Region show, my name is Kristen Chong.
And I'm Griffin Connor.
Tonight, we will be bringing you a shallow dive into the inner workings of a couple of teams from the Southeast region of the U.S. And tonight, we have two special guests with us from FRC Team 1533 Triple Strange and Team 2655 The Flying Platypi. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves?
Hi everyone, my name is DJ from FRC 1533 Triple Strange, and I'm a senior and team captain.
My name is Ethan Vandermeer. I'm from Team 2655. I've been first for about 2 years now. I mainly work in mechanical, but this year I did I helped with the chairman stuff.
All right, so we're gonna
go for it.
All right, so we're gonna start off with our first question. So let's start off with your kickoff and robot design aspects. When the game was first released for this 2020 season, how did you guys tackle the challenge? What did you guys establish as the most important thing to have on the robot? DJ, let's start with you.
All right, so at kickoff, one of the first things we get the game the same time as everyone else. So we watch the stream, we get the encryption key to the manual, and like just first glance at the rule, we saw that the climbing this year was specifically there was more low risk, higher reward, a lot of reward that would outweigh any risk that was there. 25 points is a lot for any objective, especially in this game. So just at first glance and upon looking through the rest of the rules, we saw that the climbing was definitely a critical, needed aspect for any robot in this game. Another thing that we saw specifically with the power cells is having some sort of mechanism to quickly acquire and index the power cells within the robot and being able to hold as many as you could, so the limit of 5, as well as a quick and agile robot.
All right, and Ethan, what about you on 2655?
Well, I think the first time we saw this challenge, we knew that we had to find a way to intake the balls. And since we were a short bot, we thought we should do them in the low goal, but we ended up doing it in the high goal. We also thought that the climbing was a good idea. And that was when we started designing, that was one of our higher priorities.
All right. So
how do you guys handle the robot design process? Do you tend to break it into individual subsystem teams, or do we take a more holistic approach, kind of starting, the robot as a whole? How about DJ?
So on Triple Strange, typically we'll initially take kind of a step back and look overall at what we want out of the robot, the kind of end goals. And then from there, we'll try to establish the specific features for each subsystem. And then after that kind of holistic overall look at what we want out of the robot in each particular subsystem, we'll start to split off into the different teams and groups and brainstorming the actual aspects of each particular subsystem.
Ethan, I guess, do you kind of want to talk about kind of how we tend to approach the design system? I think this year was a little bit different from previous years, where we kind of looked at the whole robot as a whole. I think if you looked at previous years, it was a little different, wouldn't you think?
Yeah. When we saw the game, what we did is everybody took a test so they knew the rules. They read the rule book and they took a test so they knew the rules. And then everybody sits down and everybody looks at the game and thinks of ideas for what we can use for the robot.
So what process do you guys tend to use for determining what subsystem to work on first? Or do they kind of all get developed around the same time? Let's start with Ethan.
Well, we usually, in our brainstorming process, we usually have the game and we have a list of what we want our robot to do. We have a list of what we need our robot to do, and then we take things from those lists and think, how can we make the robot do this? Or with stuff like that.
DJ, how about you guys?
So specifically, like related back to the subsystems and the specific development priorities for those groups, we tend to kind of rank which ones take higher priority over the others. So like, for example, the climbing this year, that's first thing on the list, followed quickly by the shooter, and then the conveyor system on the robot. Because one of our design goals was to fit under the trench to enable kind of those quicker and protected cycle times. So finding a way to be able to hold all 5 power cells in your robot while still maintaining that lower structure was definitely a very critical aspect, one that was kind of debated back and forth on the team and took a lot of iterations to get something that would work there.
And so what about CAD? As y'all tend to move from concept into design, does everyone kind of jump in and help with CAD design, or is it more a specific group of students that are more focused and specialized in doing the actual CAD design, the specific measurements and things like that? We'll start with DJ.
So typically we have like everyone takes part in the brainstorming and kind of conceptualizing of what we need the subsystems to do and some different potentials for how they could be constructed and designed. And then we have 2, 3, 4 maybe people that work on actually taking those ideas and modeling them and starting to get down into the numbers and specifics of how we could actually put them together.
Ethan, do you want to comment on kind of how 2655 tends to run CAD?
Yeah. So once we like think of our robot design, there are a few people, not the whole team, but a few people put it in CAD and they make it and they do a really good job.
So they tend to make it in CAD and kind of, we do some prototyping afterwards. And,
yeah,
I think you could agree, Ethan, that there's involvement from everyone on the team as far as input. But yeah, there's, a smaller group of people that actually do the CAD work.
Yeah.
So let's talk about this year's robot. I think DJ, you've kind of already talked about it, and Ethan a little bit as well, but what were sort of the key design goals of this year's robot for you guys? Was it, which activities did you guys prioritize and kind of why? We'll start with DJ.
My bad, guys. So the primary focus for us was firstly the climb, because it's a lot of points, relatively quick and easy to do in a small amount of time. So that was kind of the overarching goal. We have to get a climber done before we have to have a climber on the finished robot. Followed directly under that, aside from a working like conveyor and shooter system, which we were confident we could do with whatever design we went with, was a short robot that could fit under the trench to maximize the cycle times and be able to go quickly and easily through that flat and protected zone. So for us, those were kind of the two main design goals, limitations that we had to design around. Obviously, if we couldn't get a climber to fit underneath the trench, you can see in our robot, whenever it's up on the screen, that the climber could be, it didn't interfere as much with the rest of the robot, so it could easily be extended up or higher if we needed to.
All right, so Ethan, how would you take, or how was your priorities listed in for 2655, like for your design goals?
So with our robot, at first we really, really wanted to put the climber on it, but as we kept designing, we realized that would be a little bit more difficult than like to start with than adding the intake and the shooting mechanism. So we kind of put that on the back burner a little, and we went and we designed our intake and our shooter and our drive base to make sure we could get over the bumps and stuff and shoot the balls.
All
yeah,
right.
and I'll add a little bit to what Ethan mentioned with the climber, because a lot of teams might say, oh well, a climber is really easy to build, but I think for those of us that saw what happened to us in 2018, we've kind of been jaded by building climbers and elevators in the past. So the team's been historically hesitant to do any sort of elevator system, which is kind of why we shied away from it being the top priority, because we weren't sure how well we could execute.
All right, so a quick jump off script and taking a question from chat. What CAD softwares do your teams use and why? So DJ, we'll start with you.
All right, so we use Onshape primarily because of the online collaboration features, so we can have even though we do have a much smaller group of people working on the CAD at one time, it's really important for us that those few people can work efficiently with each other and make sure they're not basically just to maximize the efficiency of the resources that we do have.
All right, and Ethan, what
how
about you?
Our team, for CAD, we used to use SolidWorks, but I think it kept crashing is the reason we switched over. We switched over to Inventor. I don't know the specifics of exactly why we switched over, but I think it's because it kept crashing.
Yeah, and to kind of add to things, one of the struggles that we had with SolidWorks was, for whatever reason, it tended to be really resource intensive on the laptops that we use for CAD, and Inventor just used less resources, and we had a little bit easier time kind of doing revision control with that. We actually use GrabCAD for revision control, and while there's no we missed having the actual built-in plugin for SolidWorks, but it works just as well with Inventor. So that's kind of where that change came from, and we've bounced all over the place. We've used PTC Creo in the past, and nobody wants to go back to it.
All right, so in the last 4 years, your two teams have seen great success in North Carolina and have been on the same eliminations alliances at 5 different events, 4 of which resulted in blue banners, one being a world subdivision. How would you say your team chemistry is in its current state, and how it has helped you towards those wins in previous years? So, DJ, let's start with you.
Every time. So there's definitely, like you said, a lot of chemistry between both of our teams. Part of it is definitely like we're close to each other and we've worked out of the same build space, especially like the past 2 years a little bit. And just the people on the two teams really know each other and have established great friendships and relationships with them. In addition, I mean, we've both been very competitive the past few years, and just the kind of style of gameplay that we both do. So we typically try to, like, one of our goals, we try and do everything out there on the field. We want to climb. We want to be able to intake from off the ground everywhere. We've got swerve and a turret. I mean, we're trying to do almost everything out there on the field. And I mean, that's just part of our strategy. Whereas, and Ethan will probably be able to speak a little bit more to this, they try and take, at least the past 2 or 3 years, a more like simplistic approach, hard defense, quick cycles, which has really paid off for them, and it makes them a great partners for both of us.
All right. And so, Ethan, what's your take on this?
So I think both the teams really have, like, both teams are very strong with themselves and each other. I think both robots work very well. Like, Triple Strange usually does a lot of the higher up stuff, like the tall things, and our robots usually focus on some of the shorter things. And I think it just works really, really well.
All right.
And I'll add a little thing from the mentor perspective as well. I think one of the other things that helps, I mean, DJ already touched on it a little bit. A lot of the students on each team go to some of the same schools, since we're in the same immediate area. But even the mentors between the two teams, we kind of have a good relationship between us, and that kind of helps foster that a lot. And, you know, like DJ said, we worked out of the same or close build spaces, and, you know, they have a field or we have a field or we share a field for practice. And I think that really builds on it. But really the fact that a lot of the students are on, you know, in the same schools helps a lot. So when we joined forces like we have for the last, you know, 4 wins together, it's the kids already know each other and they already have that working relationship. It's not like a clunky, like, oh, we just paired up and we don't know these kids as well, and, you know, things like that. I think that kind of contributes towards it as well.
All right.
In terms, just quickly, in terms of like the actual alliance selections at the event and kind of the strategy behind like picking who we do, I mentioned it briefly that, like, one of the reasons 2655 in the past has been such a great partner for us, but maybe not necessarily other teams, is we always, like, we're trying to do the best that we can and do the most that we can well. So for us specifically, 2018, this year, 2020, very effective, like placing on the scale in 2018, shooting in the upper port this year, being able to climb both years. So those were kind of critical factors that helped us to rank higher, whereas like some other teams might not have been looking specifically for a low goal bot or a robot that couldn't climb this year specifically. So that kind of edge, as well as the past relationship with 2655, kind of it just makes them a more compelling partner in many cases. And we've worked with them well in the past, and we know many of the people on the team, and that definitely goes a long way in alliances, more than some people think.
Yeah, no, like, or honestly, what I've always told people is that you can't, like, a friend pick isn't a taboo thing. If you want to choose someone because they have a good bot, but also for the fact that you work well with them, that's greater than anything you will ever have in another alliance. So
it really does play a big role from what I've seen. You know, if someone, you know, gets stage fright, if someone has a new driver and you're in an environment where you know more of the people on the different teams, it can make some of that stuff a lot easier too, from what I've witnessed. And DJ made a really good point. You know, most people try to look for, you know, who can do everything the best. And one of the things that we always stress to the students in our design discussions is, you know, it's great to try to do the whole game, but when we get to the world's level, what are people going to be looking for? You know, what are the powerhouse teams at the international level going to be looking for? And that's kind of how we try to target. And then we work our way back towards how can we make that also competitive in the North Carolina arena, because their two are very different.
All right. And so, as was mentioned before, your teams together won 2018 Turing Subdivision as the 8th seed. what was your overall strategy going into it? Because it must have been threatening to be the 8th seed and specifically 1533 be the captain, and then have to face the number 1 seed of a field, but then have to continue on through that.
Yeah, I mean, 2018 was my first year on the team, but I was definitely really involved with the strategy and everything. I was on the drive team as technician that year. So the strategy was very interesting because before eliminations, we were currently in 10th place, I believe. So we weren't even sure if we were going to end up being a captain, but we went ahead and we went and did our pick list. Huge shout out to our amazing scouting team. Without our scouting data, there is no way we could have come anywhere close to what we did on Turing, because we picked 45th and 55th ranked teams. That's kind of unprecedented in and of itself as for an 8th Alliance reaching down that far. The overall strategy, I mean, we knew we were going up against the best of the best teams in our division. So we had to pick a robot that had quick cycles, and we needed some really good defense because that was 2018 defense was killer. Obviously, 2655, having worked with them in the North Carolina district and them being in our division at Worlds, makes them, I mean, they were one of, if not the best defensive efficient cycler available to us, along with Full Metal Jackets, which we saw they were extremely efficient with their scale placement. And throughout all of eliminations, I mean, all of the data that we had ended up proving itself. Strategy worked out. And man, it was quite the interesting first year at Worlds for me.
All right. And
I'm going to jump ahead to, we've got a question from chat from ArcBL or B1. How do your teams approach scouting? Do you use statistics or something less measurable in alliance picking?
Okay, so on our team, typically we look at like the measurable statistics such as how many power cubes are placed where are you putting hatches and cargo, how many power cells, power cubes are being placed where and what positions, can you climb with other partners, more of those measurable statistics, and then those things directly contribute to who gets put on our pick list.
I'll kind of take the answer for 2655 just because that's kind of that's the department that I work with, and Ethan can speak to it a little bit just because he's helped a lot with the scouting. He's one of my top scouters, honestly. But we actually use the ELO system that Caleb Sykes has put out. We auto calculate it ourselves and use that to attempt to predict match outcomes. And from there, we actually look more qualitative data. Because the ranking system kind of tells you who's going to be able to contribute to a score effectively. But, you know, we'll take note of things like, did the team show up to every match? Did they operate in every match? Were they having mechanical issues all day? Things like that is kind of what we tend to focus on.
all right.
Well, that is all the time that we have for tonight. Thanks to everyone for hanging out with us, and thank you to DJ and Ethan for joining us today. And don't forget, fun needs your help to stay loud, live, and independent. Please consider giving your support by joining the Fun Nation with a subscription or bits here on Twitch, or by becoming a patron on Patreon at patreon.com/firstupdatesnow, or just letting people in First know that this is a place to be to get the information your team needs. Don't forget to check us out on Discord, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, live here on Twitch. If you're watching live, our next show will be Mouth of the South with Team 3847 Spectrum. On behalf of myself, Griffin, and our wonderful producer, Tyler, I would like to thank you all for tuning in today, and thank all of our moderators in chat, and we will see you next time right here on the Sweet Tea Region Show.
Thanks for watching. If you want more fun content, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Thanks to all of our co-executive producers on Patreon and Tier 2 Plus subscribers on Twitch, keeping fun loud, live, and independent.